Meeting will come to order. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First up, we have Bob Ritchell with the Election Committee to announce candidates for the upcoming board election.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll call for Secretary up here as well.
Bob, can you talk right in the microphone?
Can I do this in the microphone? Okay.
Bicycle helmet.
Okay. I know already you all are concerned about budget when you see a fancy bowl like that, and probably came from her home. Of course, my purpose here this evening is to draw the list of candidates from that bowl to establish the order in which they're going to appear in all media presentation. All of you have been through this, obviously, but there may be some people listening who do not understand the purpose of this. In addition to that, when we have the candidate forum the first time through, the first person drawn this evening will also be the first person asked for that. I'd like to acknowledge very quickly the members of the election committee. Besides myself are Paul Bickford, Kelly Austin, Mary Sinkus, and Margaret Colleen. We met earlier this week, and these names were presented to us as being verified. After a short discussion, it was moved, seconded, and they were approved. The 6 candidates are, in no particular order at this time, are David Brandenburg, Jeff Hendren, Sandy Fosdick, Janice Sims, Bradley Parker, and Parker Schulten. At this time, I'll draw these names one at a time. First person on the ballot will be Sandy Fosdick. Second person will be Bradley Parker. The third person will be David Brandenburg. The fourth shall be Janice Sims. The fifth will be Parker Stolten. And the last hearing will be Jeff Hendren. That concludes my business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Next up is the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting a month ago. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there any discussion or changes? All those in favor of approving the minutes? It's unanimous. Next up is the recently completed board work session. I have a motion on that. First and second. Any additions or corrections? All those in favor?
Mike.
Okay, next up we have the Joint Advisory Committee reports. First would be recreation. Deborah?
Good evening. The meeting took place on February 13th. Observations from the amenities are as follows. At Branchwood, it was recommended that we have wayfinding signs at the door to the locker room, shower, and sauna, and the same for the racquetball downstairs. At Loch Lomond Recreation Park, it was noted that there was pooling water in the large dog park, and it suggested that a dog waste station and trash can be placed at the top of the dam for walkers and their pets. Over at Tyree, there is concern that rainwater runoff at the east corner of the restroom could cause damage to the building foundation and suggest diverting the flow. At Granton Park, unfortunately, motor vehicle has vandalized the lawn on the west side of the park driveway. At Lake Ann, it appears the ground is eroding at the far end of Lake Ann Falls Bridge and recommend looking into a solution. At the gun ranges, they were very impressed with how clear the walkways were after all that ice. Great job to the ground crew, several call-outs on that, thank you to them. And for the Trails and Greenway report, the Trail Adoption Program, which some of you may know as TAP, are volunteers and they are now organized under the Trail Blazers. They were originally started to help maintain the back 40. The program has over 500 trail volunteers in Northwest Arkansas, and they are now being professionally managed by the Trailblazers. There are formal group work days and volunteer achievement awards are being planned to make sure that the trails are kept in top shape. Finally, we had a visitor from POA membership, and she spoke to the group about concerns she had with open swim at Branchwood, and her and Jessica had a conversation offline after the meeting. A few comments from the staff reports that are relevant. Rick told us that an additional kayak rack is being installed at Lake Ann, and that they are putting the new Batters AstroTurf pad in place at the Loch Lomond softball field, which is needed. John told us that attendance at the gun ranges is up 60% over last year. There's still plenty of room in the classes, and the rifle racks at the pistol range have been replaced. Finally, Jessica told us that the kids' karate class was at total capacity sold out. The Easter egg hunt will be April 8th at Kingsdale. The youth program sign up April 22nd, and Flea in the Park October 6th and 7th. Our next meeting is March 13th. Any questions?
Good job, very thorough report.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I have one question, and you may be able to answer this. Is TAPS and FAST the same thing or not?
Was under FAST. TAP was under FAST, which stands for Friends of Arkansas Single Track, and but now they've kind of migrated underneath Trailblazers, but many of the same volunteers just carried over, so it's kind of just by nomenclature, really.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Next up, Lakes. Tom?
The Lakes report, the committee approved a nonprofit having 2 kids fishing tournaments in Bella Vista, one in September 23 and one in November 23. The tournaments will follow normal Bella Vista tournament rules. Lake Avalon drawdown work is progressing. The lake is back up a foot with recent rains, but we have been but had been low enough that it wouldn't impact the work. There are some tires and stumps in the beach area that will be removed. The lake will start to refill March 15th. Aquaculture ponds being built at Loch Lomond are progressing. Rick in the spring will hold an open house. The fly tire dock on Lake Windsor needs some adjustments. The dock crew was due last week but delayed by weather. They will install some anchors on the dock to make it more stable in the bad weather. That was it.
Thank you. Third JAC is Ruth Hatcher, golf.
Because mobility issue, I'm going to ask to speak from back here, if you would appreciate that. Thank you. We met on Wednesday, February 8th. Daryl Muldoon introduced Hannah Hillier from the POA, new golf professional at the POA at Tanyard Creek, and she played professional tour at the LPGA, and she's running a short game league at Tanyard, and it's going very, very well, and also excited about the Operation 36 program. Daryl thanked the Futures Cup for the donation to sponsor the Operation 36, and I'll talk just a bit about that later on. Maintenance, Keith was absent, so Daryl reported from him. Burksdale Bridge removal, we have all the permits. We'll start going on mid-March for the rest of it. Tom, the Bella Vista Country Club Pump House, Tom said the project went out for bids, received only 1 bid. We'll have to get a 3-bid waiver from the board. Only a small amount over budget, less than 10% threshold, and only pump house for Bella Vista Country Club, and we'll get it going. It's very important. If we lose it, we lose the greens. Daryl's report of golf operations. In January, the rounds were ended at 5,876, up 1,598 over last year. Unfortunately, we can't say the same thing about February. We experienced some very good weather during the month of January compared to last year, which the term played for major factor in the increased rounds and range buckets for the month. Range buckets ended in January 3,216, up 795 over 2022. It amazes me how we keep increasing range balls. Daryl has said Dogwood Golf Supervisor Gary is retiring. He's a great person and we'll miss him greatly. He has found a replacement. Jimmy from the Country Club will be promoted to Dogwood Golf Supervisor. The challenge, Daryl also challenged the golf committee to come up with 4 or 5 ideas of local rules in Bella Vista to be listed on cart tags. There were many interesting ideas that they will go through as a golf committee or place into the hands of the golf pros, and they'll come up with some. There were some interesting ideas plus some limericks to go with it. So Sheila asked about Operation 36, thinking that it was limited to kids. It is open to everybody. There's a kids group as well as ladies and a men's group as well, so everyone is welcome. Alex talked about the tournaments, new event in Bella Vista, men's 4-ball. Most events from last year were full capacity. New sign-up program for tournaments is live now on your app. Comments from the public. Steve Lamar was concerned about the abuse of 30-foot rule distance of greens by some of the handicap flag people, individuals in damaging golf courses. There needs to be handicap flags, but staff and golfers need to enforce the rules. Staff is monitoring the situation and working towards that. Daryl explained they showed the participants the 30-foot distant rules before giving out flags, and membership needs to, if you see something, say something. So we kind of need to monitor ourselves. We look forward to a good, strong March because February doesn't look real promising. So thank you much.
Thank you, Ruth. Next item is preliminary financial reports. Beth?
Hello all. So we're looking at January. Who's got the clicker? Thank you. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. Looking first at the consolidated financials, I'm going to call your attention to the variance to budget column first. You'll see that revenue, we beat budget in January by $52,000. Cost of sales was up, though, and that was primarily in water and food and beverage. I'll talk about that a little bit later in more detail. So that resulted in gross profit being below budget, $11,000. We did beat budget in wages and other expenses. That other expenses of $92,000 is primarily due to timing. It's just January, so it's a difference of when it was budgeted and when those expenses actually flow through. That'll probably correct in February and March. So that ends up with a EBITDA of $88,000 above budget. Looking at the variance to last year, we did beat last year's revenue, $92,000. You will see inflation from January of 22 to January 23, how that has impacted all the expenses, cost of sales, wages, other expenses. It looks pretty ugly when you look at it that way, but as you can see, we budgeted for it, we planned for it, and that's why the budget variance looks better. Looking at the POA only, the revenue was $7,000 above budget, but down $5,000 from last year. Cost of sales, so let's talk about that a little bit more. That's primarily in food and beverage, but they had increased revenue of pretty much the exact same amount as they had an increased cost of sales. You're not seeing that in that revenue line because there was other divisions with that offset it worse than revenue, but they were pretty even. Wages and benefits was pretty much right on to budget, and the other expenses It and POA and water both, as you'll see, those again are primarily beating budget just due to timing issues. So that resulted, and you'll see that the other expense beating budget is what's really driving the EBITDA being up 96,000 above budget. And that variance to last year column, same story, inflation from January 22 to January 23. I don't want to read those numbers, so. Looking at the POA, some of the areas that we did beat budget and revenue was, again, there's that 36,000 in food and beverage that I talked about earlier, dock and boat registrations, and investment income with the interest rates continuing to increase. And greens fees, both guests and members were up and assessments were up. The areas worse than budget was annual greens fees. It was 78,000 below budget, and private cart registrations was 22,000 below budget. Lot resales, 25,000 below budget, and the marketing discounts was worse than budget. So looking over at operating expenses, I'm really not going to drill down too much on either the better than budget or the worse than budget. They're there. Primarily, those are really, again, timing issues.
I had a question before we go.
Sure.
The dock registration, what is that?
The dock and boat registration
What is
is the
that?
marina and,
Is that a slip? A slip
Yeah.
rental? Okay.
yeah, right.
And it's boat registrations. It's both.
Yeah, she says dock and boats. I just didn't know what the dock part was. So
Okay.
it's the slip rental.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Lock limit, yeah.
Here's the water. Water beat revenue on budget of 44,000 and better than last year of 97,000. Their cost of sales of 27,000 that was worse than budget is, again, another timing issue. There was a rebate we received and recognized for 2022 and 2022, but it was budgeted in January. That'll correct itself this coming December. The wages was pretty much right on budget, and other expenses, again, timing. And variance last year, same story. So water sales was up 29,000, capital buy-in fees beat budget by 8,000, and new service connections beat budget by 6,000. Transfer fees and other fees were worse than budget. Again, operating expenses other than payroll costs beating budget, most of those are timing issues, and will correct. We paid $10,000 on the intercompany loan. We have a commitment to pay $280,000 during the year, so we're just barely, we're at $2.24 million now at the end of January on the loan balance. So here's a look at the divisions. I don't think I'm going to read through all those. You can see them there. Golf maintenance and recreation, lakes and parks, central admin, general income. Those were the ones that were better than budget, the biggest winners. And IT and maintenance and construction, food and beverage, legal, golf ops, those were the ones that were worse than budget. Food and beverage, it was primarily in wages. Legal was in the transfer fee, or the lot resales, and the golf ops, it was those annual cart fees and cart registrations that are below budget. So the POA without water variance is the 95,000, and the water department was worse than budget by 7,800. So if you look at the EBITDA line, the total EBITDA was better than budget by 95,000. And there's that water department borrowing 2.24. That's it. Any questions?
I have one question on the wages, TYOY. Is some of that variance because we're not fully staffed, but a lot more staffed than what we were last year?
Oh, compared to last year,
Yeah,
the
TYOY, yeah.
variance? Well, we've had wage increases in between January of '22 and January of '23. We had the inflationary adjustment mid-year. That's a lot of that. And I would say we are more staffed than last year. But, some of the reasons that you're seeing wages less than budget is because we're not completely staffed.
Thanks, Beth.
Yep. Anything else?
And we had some snow days.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Thank you, Beth. The open forum is the next. There are none.
Do we have a write-in? The open forum?
One email?
Wrote an email to us about the trails. The guy wrote about class one, class two. If, David, if we can come back to that, we did receive an emailed in comment from a member. Jessica's going to go get that, and so if we can progress, and then we can circle back, because I don't want to ignore that member with their comment.
Okay. No.
I do want to jump in. You have 3 walk-ins. I sent an email earlier today with these walk-ins. All the changes are relatively modest. We're gonna have these available to go through on the screen, so the viewers at home. I would, we can do anything. We can go through each and every all 40 that we have today, but we did go through them last week. Maybe what would make sense is go through these 3 that are changing. I always want to remind our members that are viewing from home, to change a policy requires 6 open meetings. It is a Rules and Regulations Committee meeting, a work session of the board, a regular meeting of the board, and that's where the first vote goes in. Then it goes back to the Rules and Regs again, work session again, and then a second vote at a second regular session. So it's 6 meetings. So what we encourage you to do is, if it appears that the board is really going through these 40 policies very quickly, you really have to view some of the previous meetings to get a full understanding of the effort that the board and the Rules and Regulations Committee put into these changes. Also, the vast majority of these changes are very minor. Some grammar, some wording to make things a little bit more understandable and easier to read. So that's really the nature of the changes. So nothing earth-shattering, but I do recommend we focus in on 1.08. I'm sorry, we're going to start with 1.01.
You want to, hey Tom, can I suggest you do the ones that are going for second reading first?
Yeah,
Yes,
let's
great.
do the second reading
Absolutely.
first. And I hopped skipped an item on the agenda, my fault. The summary of the February 9th executive session, an update on the Trafalgar stump dump litigation. Okay, now, up for a second vote, the first one up of the 11 is policy 107 about board meetings. Do I have a motion to vote on that for a second time? Who's first?
I'll start.
Okay.
And that's on page 20 of your board packet. 1.07, correct?
Yes.
54.
54.
Oh. See what I mean? We need tablets rather than killing trees.
ready.
You have one with finance.
You guys have one with financials
Yes,
added, that's
yes.
what's, apologize for that.
Okay, make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 1.07, board meetings. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Second on that? Mike? Was there any further discussion on this one? All those in favor of it's approved. Next up is 1.01, Board of Directors Ethics. Jackie?
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 1.10, Board of Directors Ethics. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second by Jerry. Is there any questions? Okay, we'll vote on that one. Any opposed? Okay, that's passed. 1.11, Conflict of Interest Policy.
I'll make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 1.11, conflict of interest policy. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you, Mike. Second by Jason. 1.11, any comments? All those in favor? 9. Next up is 1.12. Jan?
Make a motion approving the recommended.
Thank you. I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 1.12, disciplinary procedure for directors. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Second? JB? Any comments, questions on 112? All those in favor? Unanimous. 2.01, Common Property, Lakes.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 2.01, Common Property Lakes. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Second by Director Sims. Any comments, questions? All those in favor? Thank you. 2.02.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 2.02, reservation of amenities and fee policy. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second. Jerry's a second on that one. Comments or questions? All those in favor? 2.03, golf cart registration.
Yeah, I'll make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 2.03, golf cart registration. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Mike, second. Comments, questions? All those in favor? 9. 2.04, boat registration and mooring lease agreement.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 2.04, boat registrations and mooring lease agreement. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jerry? Comments? All those in favor? 9. 2.05, common property.
Make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 2.05, common property. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Director Hagan? Comments, questions? All those in favor? 9. 2.06, member conduct.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 2.06, member conduct. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second by Jason. Comments? All those in favor? Thank you. 2.07.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 2.07, common property cutting trees. This is the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jackie? Comments?
I'll make a comment just as a little homer to the natural life out there. Please take care of our common property and our forests. Don't go down there cutting trees for firewood or things that you shouldn't. Thank you.
You see something, say something. I noticed, Mike, that you're on the tree board for the city, is that correct? And you got to read this one.
You know, sometimes math works out.
Isn't it amazing? Any other comments? All those in favor? Okay, that brings us to the end of the policies that are now approved and will be posted. Next up is the policies that are up for a first reading.
We're going to revert back real quick to the member comments. We didn't have anybody in attendance that wanted to make a member comment, but we did receive an email, and our corporate secretary, Jessica, will read that email right now.
Email from Amy Darpinin. Hello, please forward to the appropriate folks. Sorry that I can't appear in person for the meeting on Thursday. Changes are proposed to Policy 3.05, Common Property Trails about bicycles. I would highly recommend that instead of navigating the many types of e-bikes, that a speed limit be put into place, which appears to be the source of aggravation for some folks. My Class 2 e-bike ceases to provide assistance when the speed is in excess of 20 miles per hour. I do have a throttle which assists me in crossing streets quickly to avoid traffic and to start going uphill. If I used my throttle extensively, my battery would run out really quickly. Note that the City of Bella Vista presently prohibits e-bikes with triggers, but the Arkansas governor recently made recommendations that all cities allow both classes. Since the city has this rule already, maybe the POA doesn't need it. Thank you, Amy Darpinian.
And just so you're aware, in going through and making changes to our policies, we mirrored the city's ordinance on this one. So it is possible that if the city were to change their ordinance as a result of the governor's comments, then the POA could at that time make those adjustments. But I think that having them mirror each other, I think, is the appropriate way to go.
Absolutely.
On the screen here, on the left-hand side, you will see policy 1.01, and on the right side, you're going to see a particular section of 1.08. Director Fosdick brought up there was some inconsistency between these two policies previously, and Doug, our general counsel, went through and adjusted these so that they would match up nicely. This would require us to send policy 1.01 back for a first vote. We had previously touched this one a couple months ago, but would require us to go back. I'm going to click just on 1.01, and you'll see this is the change, and it makes it very clear, keeping in mind that we are following the court order from 2009.
So these policies then will be in agreement, same work, same language on both?
Correct.
That's good. That's good. So, can I have a motion to approve policy 1.08 for the first reading?
1.01.
101.
Yes.
101.
We're changing 101, okay. That's not listed here. Okay, can I have a motion on 101?
I thought I understood Tom to say it was going back to R&R.
No, we made the decision to go ahead and,
Okay.
because it was so small and it was important.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's another one, don't look at that number. There's another memo
Page
inside.
79. I don't have page numbers.
I'll make a motion approving recommended changes to policy 1.01, member access to association information. Ooh, say that fast. This is the first of two required readings.
And the second on that one?
I'll second.
Mike? There we go. Yeah, as Tom said, this brings two different policies into agreement with the same language.
Correct.
So the language has been previously approved for another policy, so we're just bringing 101 in compliance so they say the same thing. Okay, is there any other comments or questions about a first reading on 1.01?
I'll just make a quick question about it, that I'm really proud of the Rules and Regulation Committee as well as our IT department and everyone involved here at the POA with taking this portion of the business very seriously. It's increasingly becoming an electronic age, and so this is really important information to continue to iterate upon and keep private and keep safe. And we've got the members' interests at our hearts right here. So.
Okay. Others? Let's take a vote on the first reading. All those in favor? That's 9. Next up is...
I'm sorry, yeah.
You did.
I do that often, unfortunately.
You had something to say, go ahead.
Next up, we have policy 1.08. This is the other side of that change. Plus, we walked in a hard copy, and that change is at the very top. You'll see how we struck the Bella Vista Village Property Owners Association bylaws. It was really redundant because we were already talking about governing documents. That change came in late, which is why it's a hard copy that was walked in. Everything else we've discussed at some point or another.
Okay, can I have a motion for first reading on 1.08? Jackie?
Make a motion to approving the recommended changes to policy 1.08, special meeting of members. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second by Jason. Is there any comments or questions on this? Okay. Those in favor of approving 108 for first reading? That's 9. What's the next one?
Okay, so next is the long list, but we do have 2 that had walk-in changes, and this is 2.08, and you'll see that at the very bottom, what we've done is we struck vehicle restrictions and.
3 words.
Yep, and this was a walk-in one. Fortunately, we are adjusting this before this went for a first vote, so we would ask for a first vote. That is 1.08. 208, I'm sorry. And then the next one that had a change was 3.03, and the change here is the association is exempt from the requirement specified in this section. This section has to do with companies who own property, and they have to name 2 people that are in charge. That's really doesn't apply to the POA at all, or the association.
That's meant to limit liability by naming someone from a corporation, and since the POA is a member, that wouldn't apply to the POA.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the first one up then is 2.08.
Yep.
Okay, I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 2.08, common property trails. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by JB. Okay, since it's the first reading, any comments or questions, concerns? Jackie?
I have a clarification need. So are we saying that during a special event, by removing that you can or cannot have a gas powered?
That you can.
Okay.
We see instances where like a race organizer or something like that might need to get to a location very quickly. And so in those instances, a race organizer or someone like that would.
I agree with that. It was unclear to me if we were saying you could or couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But by taking this out, it allows us to not restrict for the special
Yeah,
event.
I think the concern
Okay.
that someone brought up was that we would allow race participants or, someone to use gas-powered vehicles, but that's not the case.
Okay. All those in favor of the changes? Thank you. 9. Next up, 2.09.
I make a motion that policy 2.09, common property preservation of natural environment, be approved. This is the first of 2 readings.
Thank you. Second by Jason. Preservation of natural environment. Okay. Any comments or questions? All those in favor of the changes? 9. 3.01. Penalizing a member.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 3.01, penalizing a member. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jerry is a second on that one. Comments, questions? All those in favor of the changes? 9. 3.01.1, appeal procedure.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 3.01.1, appeal procedure. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by JB. Comments or questions?
No.
All those in favor? 9. The 3.02, identification cards.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 3.02, identification cards. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jason? Comments or questions? Michael?
Yeah, I know that we're moving towards some digital solutions in this realm too, for identification cards. So I think it'll continue to iterate as we get further down the technological line. So I know we'll be rereading this one in the future at some point in time. So keep tuned.
Yeah, because today it works. In the future, we probably change it again. So, all those in favor? 9. 3.03, membership cards.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 3.03, membership cards. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jerry? Comments or questions on membership cards? All those in favor? 9. 3.04, guest policies.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 3.04, guest policies. This is the first of 2 readings.
Thank you. Director Hagan? Comments? Questions? All those in favor? I believe that's 9. 3.08, temporary parking of vehicles.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 3.08, temporary parking of vehicles. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you, Jackie. Second by Jason. Comments, questions? All those in favor? 3.09, suspension of water service for non-payment of assessments.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 3.09, suspension of water service for non-payment of assessments. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second by Director Sims. Comments, questions? Michael?
I know this can be a touchy subject. Usually when we run into suspension of water services, it's from some pretty trying circumstances from our membership out there that have resulted in them not being able to pay their bill. And I know the POA has faced some really difficult interactions with this, but I'm confident that our time spent with the water department and the rules and regulations and everybody that's staff members, we do actively try to help the members get through these situations. This is a last resort policy, and truly a last resort policy. And I hope everybody remembers that and keeps that in top of mind, because we do try to provide every outlet possible.
Yeah, it's true. Member resources and the water department specifically work as well as they can. They work with customers, members, to keep their water on. And they don't want to turn people's water off. It's, as you say, it is a last resort. But that being said, we need to have a policy. So, all those in favor? Thank you. 9. 4.01, cross-connection control policy. That's another thing you just can't do this.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 4.01, cross-connection control policy. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Director Hagan, second. Comments? All those in favor? That's 9. 4.02, exterior maintenance policy.
I make a motion approving the recommended removal of policy 4.02 exterior maintenance policy. This is the first of 2 required readings.
JB is a second on that one. Okay, this is the first policy that we've come to where we plan to remove it completely. I'm going to ask Tom for just a little background on why.
This is really the realm of the ACC. It's not ours. Having it in here only confuses members when they read through our governing documents, so it's really unnecessary. We don't have any authority in this area, so we're recommending the removal of this one. And we have a couple other policies a little bit later on where we're removing because they're either redundant or no longer necessary. Maybe they're created 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and have not aged well.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? All those in favor of removing the policy? Thank you. 9. 6.02, official POA publication and release of information.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 6.02, official POA publication and release of information. This is the first of 2 required readings.
And Jerry is a second on that one. Comments? All those in favor of the changes? 9. 7.03, annual budget.
David, I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 7.03, annual budget. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jason is a second on that one. Comments?
What's changing on that one? I've had a couple here where nothing is marked, and I'm trying to remember what it was that we were changing.
It's probably a comma or something. Let's see.
Does anybody have one that's marked?
Oh, this is the one that we approved on September 29th of last year. So we really, that we put it in there because it was in sequence, but we worked on this in September of last year. So there are no changes at this point.
So we're just approving what's already there?
Yeah.
Sequence number.
Yeah, later there'll be.
That's later.
Yeah.
That's the confusing part.
Yeah,
Okay. No changes, but approving the continuation of policy 7.03. All those in favor? Thank you. 9. 704, investment policy. Finally, there's some interest rates out there worth investing.
Oh,
It's JB.
no, it's my turn.
I will not take that.
Oh, goodness. I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 7.04, investment policy. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jerry is a second on that one. Comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor of the changes to 704?
I don't think it would hurt to summarize, like Tom did before, that we're basically not here to,
Which one?
the policy we're voting on, that, we're not out here to be super aggressive with the funds.
Oh,
but
no.
I just think that there's a lot of
Preservation.
changes in here, and I think the overall gist of this policy is important.
Preservation of principle. That's first and foremost.
The prior policy was an elaborate, step-by-step explanation of how we would invest funds, but as Tom has stated in previous meetings, the minute you lose principle, the membership really goes after the board. If, our our goal is to preserve principle, and so that's what this policy is aimed at accomplishing.
Yeah, we are not trading in cryptocurrencies. No. So, okay. 704, the investment policy. All those in favor? 9. 7.05, assessments, fees, other revenues.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 7.05, assessment fees and other revenues. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second by JB. All those in favor of the changes to 7.05? Anybody opposed? Didn't think so. 8.01, directors and officers indemnification.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 8.01, directors and officers indemnification. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jason's a second on that one. This one was changed not too long ago also. All those in favor of the changes today? 9. 8.02, gifts and donations.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 8.02, gifts and donations. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you, Mike. Second by Director Sims. Comments, questions? All those in favor of the changes? 9.
You'll be missing out on that fruit basket this year, Dave. I apologize.
8 point. Oh, this is a long list, folks. 8, but look at, we're all the way up to 8. 8.03, request for the use of common property.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes for policy 8.03, request for the use of common property. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second by JB. Comments, questions? All those in favor? Okay. Now I've lost my place. Which one was that? 803?
8.03.1.
Okay, now it's 8.03.1, use of common property.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 8.03.1, use of common property. This is first of 2 required readings.
Good. Thank you.
I'll do it.
Jerry is a second on that one. Nobody's wishing to speak. All those in favor of the changes? Thank you. 8.03.2, docks and boathouse policy.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 8.03.2, docks and boathouse policy. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jason is second on that one. All those in favor? 9. Next is one that has been recommended for removal, 8.04, maintaining of original documents. Do you have anything that you wanted to say? No.
This is one that just has not aged well. We keep everything electronic on our website. You can go on our website and see at least a dozen years worth of audited financials, 8 years of minutes and agendas and so forth. So back in the day, all the information was kept in the library. Now the website is our warehouse.
Thank you.
David, I'll make a motion approving the recommended removal of policy 8.04, maintaining of original documents to the first. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Director Hagan, second. Comments, questions?
I'll make one comment. I'm not quite sure, on the rules and regs, is something that just hits me right now is where are those, in fact, physically going to live at some point in time? A server is all well and good and all, but how do we back that up? And ultimately, it still lives in the cloud, but it still has that physical incarnation. is stored on a hard disk somewhere. Just making sure that we're taking care of that.
Yeah, our document retention program, we have specifics internally that we back up periodically and frequently the servers that those are housed on. And as Tom mentioned, we have a lot of that online, but we're also preserving documents in accordance with Arkansas state law, so we're required by law to preserve those documents.
Okay. All those in favor of removing policy 8.04? 9. Next up is 8.06. This is also a removal, conducting a business on residential property.
This is an ACC issue, not a POA issue.
Yep, simply said.
I make a motion approving the recommended removal to policy 8.06, conducting a business on residential property. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second by Jason. Yeah, it's not our business, belongs to the ACC. All those in favor of removing the policy? 9. 8.08, Standard Operations Procedure Manual. This is a removal recommendation.
I'll make a motion approving the recommended removal of policy 8.08, Standard Operation Procedures Manual. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Second.
Second by Jerry. Questions? All those in favor of removing? 9. 8.09, Engagement of Professional Service Providers.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 8.09, engagement of professional service providers. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Mike does a second on that one. Comments, questions? All those in favor? Next is the last, I believe, of the removals recommendations. 8.10, Engagement of Contract Service Providers.
I make a motion approving the recommended removal to policy 8.10, engagement of contract service providers. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jason is a second on that one. All those in favor of removing the policy? 9. 8.11, Procurement of Goods, Equipment, and Contract Service Providers.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 8.11, procurement of goods, equipment, and contract service providers. This is the first of 2 required readings.
JB? Thank you.
I think that this might be the time to bring up the fact that we combined the one right before that removed and put it in this policy. So the one we just removed, 8.10, we've now incorporated into 8.11.
Ah, good idea.
Pretty snazzy, huh?
Yeah. Make it clear, don't have it in 2 places, then it's just in 1 place. All those in favor of the changes? Thank you. 8.13, Leasing of Association Assets.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 8.13, Leasing of Association Assets. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you.
Second.
Jerry is a second on that. Comments or questions?
I'm still opposed to this change for the same reasons that I mentioned at the work session.
I didn't hear what you said.
She's opposed to the change.
For the same reason as I mentioned at the work session.
Okay. Anybody else? All those in favor of the changes to policy 8.13? Opposed? 1. Policy 8.14, approval and change of scope procedures for capital projects.
David, I'll make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 8.14, approval and change of scope procedures for capital projects. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Jason? Comments, questions? All those in favor
Is
of the...
there a change?
Pardon?
Is there a change? I guess I'm a little bit concerned when we're voting on these because it says recommended changes in the motion. And I'm not seeing any changes. Maybe Doug
was
wants
done
to.
This
back
was
in what-
again done back in
Yeah.
September of '22. So we're just voting on it because of its sequence, it's in the thing.
But we're making a motion to approve recommended
she's-
changes and there are none.
And there are no changes.
Yeah, no, she's correct.
Yeah.
There should be no motion at all.
Okay, then we don't motion it.
Somebody withdraw it.
Will you withdraw your motion?
Yes.
And a
No, withdraw
second?
the motion.
Second.
Okay. Withdrawn. 8.16, authority to approve employment agreements.
Oh, sorry. I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 8.16, authority to approve employment agreements. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you.
Second.
Jerry's a second on that one. All those in favor? Next up, 9.01.
Before we go to,
The logo.
sorry, before we go to 9.01, we had another one, Sandy, that was just like that one that had no strikes on it. Do we
Yeah.
need to go back and address that one as well? We'll find it.
Not really.
There were actually 2 prior to this last one that didn't have any changes.
That's a good point.
I didn't mention it because I thought maybe mine just wasn't
Jackie's
marked.
point was that we just don't bring it up for a second reading, which I
That's
I
right.
think that's a good
That's right.
option.
Okay. The good news is the paper on the left is getting thicker than the paper on the right, so we're almost done. Make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 9.01, Bella Vista logo. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second by Jackie. All those in favor? 9. 9.03, volunteerism.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 9.03, volunteerism. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Michael?
I'll make a comment in regards to this motion. In the spirit of volunteerism, which is one of the real hallmarks of this community, I believe many of the things that make Bella Vista special is because so many people volunteer their time, their love, their effort, and sometimes even money to all the great amenities and programs that we have here in Bella Vista. Continue to volunteer. We need it as much as ever. Thank you so much for the time that you give.
Including all of you here. And there's six other individuals that were named today that were willing to volunteer their time. That's a great thing for this community.
Okay. Voting on 9.03, volunteerism. All those in favor? 9. 9.04, board election and political candidates / use of facilities.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 9.04, board election and political candidates / use of facilities. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Second by Jason. All those in favor? 9.
2 more.
10.01, definition of a dependent.
I make a motion approving the recommended changes to policy 10.01, definition of a dependent. This is the first of 2 required readings.
Thank you.
Second.
Jerry is the second on that one. You want to say anything?
No, I want to vote.
You're ready to vote. All those in favor?
I'm tired of this one, yeah.
9. That was the last one.
No, it wasn't.
No.
We've got one on the back page.
Back page.
Well,
List
that
of
was the last
contents.
policy.
All right.
Good fix.
Oh, that's right.
Who's up next wants to make a motion to
I
change?
make a motion approving the recommended changes to the list of contents for the policies. This is first of 2 required readings.
Second by Jason. Yes, this is a complete renumbering of what we just approved. It will happen after we're done changing all policies, and then they will be grouped by subject matter. Make it hopefully easier to plow your way through them and figure out what's going on. So,
Yep.
all those in favor of the renumbering? Good. Okay, that will get us to the next item, the 3-bid waiver for the Country Club Pump Project. I believe there was some comment to this earlier.
Yeah, so this is the bid to shore up the Country Club pump house, the only pump house for this golf course to do work. This is an approved project in the 2023 budget cycle. We came in a little bit over budget, but not above the 10% threshold, so we're pleased with that, given all the stuff that's going on with inflation. But we only received 1 bid on this work, which is not uncommon. This is very specialized work. The good news is we've worked with this company before on multiple other projects and have been pleased with their performance, so we're asking for a 3-bid waiver on this project.
I'll be happy to.
Who will make that motion?
I'll be happy to. I'll make a motion granting 3-bid waiver for the Country Club Pump House Stabilization Project. Despite the efforts to receive multiple bids, only 1 contractor ended up submitting the bid on the project.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Second by Jerry.
And we employed an engineering firm, and they did advertising. They contacted multiple companies, and we only got 1 bid.
Wasn't for lack of trying.
Wasn't for a lack of trust.
The good news is, we're comfortable with the bid we got. That people will do good work.
And as Ruth said, we got to do this
Oh, quickly,
quickly.
quickly. That poor old pump house. All those in favor of the 3-bid waiver? 9. Okay, unless there's anything else by one of the directors, I'm going to go over very quickly the announcements of upcoming meetings. Lakes JAC, Wednesday, March 8th, 2 p.m. here in the boardroom, followed by the Golf JAC meeting on this 8th at 4 p.m. Rules and Regulations meeting Thursday, the 9th at 1:30 p.m., followed by the Board of Directors GM meeting Thursday, 9th, 2:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. This is a closed meeting. Recreation JAC meeting is Monday, the 13th at 4 p.m. here in the boardroom. Meet the candidates, Tuesday, the 14th, 6 p.m. at Lake Point and via live stream. The Board of Directors work session, Thursday, March 16th, 9 a.m. in the boardroom. And the Board of Directors regular meeting next month will be Thursday, March 23rd at 6 p.m. right here in the boardroom. And with that, we have managed in a little over an hour to get through 40-some motions.
And what teamwork.
Yes, thank you very much. It was a little bit boring, but Doug is the guy that said we had to do it one at a time. We just keep blaming him.
I have one question, not to keep
Yes,
us
sir.
longer, but the meet the candidate, since we're not at Reardon where there's a big space, how do, if I remember correctly, it's been a year, the questions that come from the audience. Don't we have questions come from the audience? No, they pool them together, don't they? Yeah, they pool them together.
So when you come in, first of all, it's going to be at Lake Point. When you come in, you will be greeted by the Elections Committee, and they will take all of the recommended questions, and then as the meeting begins, Bob Ritchell, who's the chair of the committee, will start the meeting. The Elections Committee will come off to the side, and they will select which questions they like the best. They want to make sure that no question is slanted to help one candidate over another, so forth. And then they will give those questions, the ones that they've approved, to Bob Ritchell. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So they will not be taking written in or emailed questions. It'll only be people that are present.
No, you got to be present.
Okay. Just because it's a smaller venue, I didn't know.
The questions have to be approved by the
correct
by the election committee.
And then they combine like questions.
That is correct. And the Elections Committee comes up with 5 or 6 questions in advance, and that's what the questions that Bob begins with. We do have a 2-hour limit on the meeting, and with 6 candidates and 5 or 6 canned or advanced prepared questions, they may only field 1 or 2 questions from the audience, simply because you're getting close to 2 hours at that point. All right, and it will be live streamed if you're unable to attend.
Good luck to all the candidates.
That's it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.